The secret Spain keeps from its people. Morning light settles over Madrid. Before the streets fully wake. Stone facades hold the cold of night. Flags do not move. Nothing appears urgent. And yet, beneath the stillness, Spain is always managing something it does not announce. For Princess Leonor, this silence is not incidental. It is formative. It is the environment in which a future sovereign is shaped long before she is empowered. The secret Spain keeps from its people is not a document. It is not a meeting. It is not even a decision. It is a method. Spain does not explain continuity. It performs it. From the outside, the monarchy appears restrained, even minimal. Few declarations, carefully rationed visibility, long stretches where nothing seems to happen at all. That is the first misunderstanding. Because in constitutional monarchies, what looks like inactivity is often the most active phase of control. This is the living thread of continuity. Every absence is measured. Every silence is intentional. Every delay is part of a longer calculation about legitimacy, timing, and national endurance. At minute 2, the assumption fractures. The secrecy is not designed to protect Leonor from Spain. It is designed to protect Spain from uncertainty. Modern states do not fear crowds. They fear instability. They fear moments when symbolism outruns consent. Spain learned that lesson the hard way. So today, what the public sees is not the full process, only the result that has already been stabilized. Behind that restraint stands the current guarantor of continuity, King Felipe VI. Not as a personality, as a function, he embodies the state's preference for quiet control over visible improvisation. His role is not to inspire. It is to prevent rupture. This is why Spain does not speak plainly about succession. Because speaking creates expectation. Expectation creates pressure. And pressure forces timing before the institution is ready. By minute 5, the phrase returns, heavier now. Not because there is deception, but because there is sequencing. Spain does not ask whether Leonor will reign. It asks when acknowledging that inevitability becomes safer than postponing it. This distinction matters. At minute 8, the deeper mystery emerges. There are thresholds that, once crossed, cannot be uncrossed. Independent authority, unmediated symbolism, public accountability that no longer roots through advisors. Spain knows exactly where those thresholds are. And it knows that once crossed, the monarchy must absorb whatever comes next without adjustment. So the silence continues. From United States, observers read the restraint as institutional discipline, a sign that Spain values predictability over spectacle. From the United Kingdom, comparisons quietly form, measuring how heirs are introduced without destabilizing the crown. Canada and Australia interpret the silence through a Commonwealth lens. Continuity must feel boring to remain credible. Germany reads it as seriousness, an institution that understands the cost of miscalculation. Spain hears all of this. It responds to none of it. At minute 10, the pressure tightens. Because secrecy is not free. In a transparent age, silence invites speculation. And speculation, left unmanaged, becomes narrative. This is the institutional strain Spain is quietly approaching. The moment when saying nothing begins to say too much. By minute 14, the point of no return comes into view. There will be a moment when the public no longer accepts delay as prudence. When restraint begins to look like uncertainty. When continuity itself demands visibility. That moment has not arrived yet. But it is no longer abstract. At minute 19, the future risk becomes clear. If the monarchy reveals too little, it risks detachment. If it reveals too much, it risks politicization. The balance is narrow, and the margin for correction is shrinking. This is why the secret persists. Not because Spain distrusts its people, but because it understands how fragile legitimacy becomes once it is forced to explain itself in real time. In the final moments, the silence settles differently. Not a conspiracy, a safeguard. Because when the institution finally speaks plainly, when Leonor's role is no longer buffered by silence, Spain will not be managing possibility anymore. It will be committing to a future that can no longer be rehearsed. And whether that future holds firm remains a question history has not yet answered. The second part begins when silence stops being neutral. Because there comes a point when what is unsaid becomes a signal of its own. For Princess Leonor, that point is approaching quietly, without ceremony, without announcement. Not through scandal, not through crisis, but through accumulation. Every year she advances in age, training, and visibility, the gap between preparation and acknowledgement narrows. And gaps, in institutions, create pressure. Spain's unspoken method has always relied on one assumption. That time itself is an ally. But time is never neutral in constitutional systems. It either stabilizes, or it exposes. This is where the secret becomes fragile. Up to now, managed silence has worked because the monarchy still controls the rhythm of attention. Appearances are rare enough to feel deliberate. Absences still read as discipline. But discipline only convinces when it feels intentional. At this stage, every withheld detail invites interpretation. Every delayed milestone invites comparison. And comparison is where systems lose control of narrative. That is why the architecture of restraint still runs through King Felipe VI. Not because he seeks dominance, but because the institution has no other stabilizer left. Once Leonor steps fully into independent symbolic authority, the crown loses its buffer. There is no intermediary, no absorber of criticism, no delay mechanism. That moment is irreversible. This is the real reason Spain does not speak openly about the future. Because once the future is named, it must be defended in real time. International observers sense this inflection. In Washington, patience begins to look like a finite resource. Stability must eventually translate into clarity. In London, restraint is admired, but only if it resolves before credibility thins. Canada and Australia watch for the familiar pattern. When an institution waits too long, relevance becomes the casualty. Germany reads the tension differently. Timing misjudged is not caution, it is risk. Spain hears all of it, and still chooses quiet. By minute 14, the structural dilemma is unavoidable. The monarchy cannot remain both protected and distant indefinitely. At some point, legitimacy must move from being managed to being lived. That is the threshold Spain has not yet crossed. And the danger is not that it will cross it too soon, but that it will cross it under pressure rather than choice. By minute 19, the future strain is no longer hypothetical. If the silence holds too long, it will stop protecting continuity and start questioning it. If it breaks too abruptly, it will expose an error before the system can absorb the consequences. This is the narrow corridor Spain is walking. The secret, in the end, is not hidden forever. It is deferred. Because once the silence lifts, once Leonor's role is no longer mediated by ambiguity, the institution will lose the luxury of calibration. What follows will not be rehearsed. It will be tested. And Spain knows that when silence finally gives way to certainty, history will not judge the secrecy. It will judge the timing.